Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we are back with the 1949 film Mighty Joe Young. This is Castle of Horror episode 334. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hi. Why are you laughing?
I laughed because suddenly it occurred to me, it's so distinct. Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. It makes you sound like you're the sponsor, in a sense.
I am sort of
like your color tile or something, except for law. That is really cool.
The long arm.
I'm glad that we could have you here. Okay, Mighty Joe Young is a 1949 American black and white fantasy film distributed by RKO, produced by the same creative team responsible for King Kong, which had come out in 1933. It was produced by Merian Cooper, who wrote the story, and Ruth Rose, who wrote the screenplay, of course, for Son of Kong. And maybe I don't remember. I don't know if she was and King Kong. Okay,
and King Kong.
It was directed by Ernest Schoedsack and stars Robert Armstrong again, and also Terry Moore and Ben Johnson, who, of course, went on to win an Academy Award for the Last Picture Show. Animation effects were handled by Ray Harryhausen. So this one is about a young woman named Jill.
That's actually not entirely true. Ray Harryhausen did work on this movie, but Willis O'Brien was the director of the animation department.
But according to the IMDb, Ray Harryhausen did like 90% of it.
Yeah, he did. He did, but he was under the direction of Willis. Willis O'Brien was a fairly old man at this point. So it's yet another connection to Kong.
It's very interesting. Okay, yes, Willis O'Brien being the guy who had handled it for Kong, but it's just so fascinating to see Harryhausen, like the Harryhausen, right? Like coming in, here. That's just truly wild. And so the story here is a young woman, Jill Young, lives on her father's ranch in Africa. She has raised this giant gorilla from the point when it was just a baby gorilla, and then because of Robert Armstrong being his usual, I don't even know, his usual flim-flam man kind of character, she gets dragged to Hollywood with Mighty Joe Young, the ape, to do a show that winds up being a big mistake for everybody involved. That's Mighty Joe Young. So you
think filling a nightclub with wild animals like that would never go awry.
It is.
Yeah, I don't know how it went wrong. I mean, it seemed like a foolproof
I love
plan.
that they've got a bar with like super thick glass and lions wandering around.
It better be super thick glass, because even if everything went perfect and the lions never got out, it would stink in that lion cave.
Yeah.
You know that one of the lions actually did get out in the making of the film and grabbed the trainer by the neck.
Oh no!
And so and then the second unit director David Sharp was telling the story, and he said that he was in a camera cage. David Sharp was, and so he pushed the door open, raced across the set, and punched the lion in the face, and shocked him badly that they let go. But damn, there's a lot of really terrifying, dangerous stunts in this film. I was just astounded at how much danger they seem to put themselves in.
Yeah, that's old Hollywood, baby. I mean,
no CGI back then. A lot of the times you had to do something, you just went and did it.
Good grief! Well, yeah, I mean, even stars, because you look at like your classic, silent film stars, doing things like just standing there. Buster Keaton, standing perfectly in place so that a wall can fall around him, and doing just nutso kind of stuff like that. And yeah, I'm amazed at that. Getting in front of trains. I it blows my mind what people used to be willing to do.
And still are if you're Tom Cruise.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's totally true. Yeah, that guy's willing to break his ankle doing Mission Impossible movies. I mean, that's
or Jackie Chan. Let's not forget that Jackie Chan probably has had more insanity and destruction of his own body than Tom Cruise ever will.
Oh, jumping through windows and stuff like that. Just spinning perfectly so that he just barely misses being shredded. Just amazing tricks. Yeah. Okay. Let's get our opening thoughts about Mighty Joe Young. The stunts are not the biggest thing about this, but I mean, boy, the stunts are amazing. Get some opening thoughts. Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll just get us into it. So, Drew, what are your opening thoughts on Mighty Joe Young?
So this is a movie that I have loved for a long time because of and I liked it as a little kid. It's very charming. It's much more of a fairy tale, I think, than Kong. Even though Kong has more fantastical stuff in it, this is a lot lighter in tone. And I think that as a kid, you're always kind of rooting for King Kong to survive. So this is the movie that sort of gives you that. I do think also, speaking into his relationship with Kong, if you were to view the original Kong movies as like a trilogy, this definitely could be seen as kind of the last part of that because of, the way that this sort of progresses, the way the characters are portrayed, because like you actually by the time you get to this one, you have characters that are actively advocating for the giant gorilla in the movie, which is definitely an evolution from King Kong and Son of Kong. I also think that this movie is influential on all the King Kong movies that came after it in how sympathetic, like actively sympathetic Joe is, and how heroic he is at times. And I think about the the Dino De Laurentiis Kong, and definitely the Peter Jackson Kong, who is proportioned more like Mighty Joe Young, actually. And then of course the Kong from the Monsterverse movies. I see a lot of Mighty Joe Young in the way we've taken King Kong forward into the next century. But this movie itself, it's so fun. Like it just, great animation sequences. And the nice thing about it is like most of the people who do try to do wrong to Mighty Joe Young get that sort of karmic comeuppance, which I like. So I don't know, like I'm kind of babbling, but like I really love this movie. I actually am actively kicking myself because when we started talking about doing a round of Kong and Godzilla films to tie into Godzilla versus Kong, I initially mentioned like a lot of terrible King Kong ripoffs instead of going right to this, even though like this is a movie that I truly love, but it's only a monster movie in the very loosest of the terms. So I think that's probably why I didn't immediately go to it. And it's definitely not a horror film. I think it is right to call it a fantasy film. But it's definitely the second best giant gorilla movie I think that has ever been made, if you can make that claim. Anyway, that's my opening thoughts.
That's a lot, and can I just ask you real quick, when did you discover this movie, Drew?
Jeez, I probably Kong I saw earlier, but I probably around 8 or 9. I rented it at the video store, and it was like my parents were probably just tired of me watching King Kong incessantly. And the video store man was probably like, well, here, this is a lot like Kong, but it's different. But I'm sure pretty soon my parents were probably tired of hearing in the background, Joe.
All right, cool. I just want to note for the record that when I was 8 or 9, there was no such thing as video rental. So that was not even an option for me. Julia,
we'd be old.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the case. But that's okay. That is all right. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I have a lot of, once again, mixed feelings about this film, because I have a hard time getting past just, and again, I recognize it's the time that it was made in. But I have a hard time getting past just the whole thing about how the very few people of color that are in this film are treated, and how the animals are treated. That just really, it's problematic. They like say that the black people in Africa are speaking Swahili, but they made up the language. It's not actually, like, you could have maybe found like actual anyway. It's just there's a lot of that stuff where it's just like, oh, the only black people in this film are either super primitive dancers or super primitive whatever those two guys that have the little baby gorilla are, or servants. That's it, and they're in Africa. And then of course the animals, just it was heartbreaking to watch how they must have treated those horses to get them to react like that. But there's like all these lines. But that aside, I adored looking at the little baby gorilla. The little girl is awesome at the beginning. And then just all of the sequences, all the animation sequences are fantastic. All of the stunts are fantastic. The special effects, I'm always marveling at how these things are done. Like the fire sequence where they put the orange filter over the whole thing just to make it be red, and then there's the house, the giant children's home burning down. It's just terrifying. There's only a few things where you kind of go, okay, that looks really bad, but for the most part it looks great. And it's just I'm always amazed when you have these practical effects that just look so good. And I really liked I'm not actually a country music person, even though I grew up in Texas, but some country musicians do kind of just make me go like swoon a little bit. And this guy Ben Johnson just struck me as the type. He's not a singer. In fact, he says he was a cowboy and champion roper from Oklahoma. And then he went to Hollywood to become a horse wrangler, but he made more money there in a day than he made in a week. So he stayed in Hollywood. But just that kind of guy, like the cowboy kind of guy, like I say, doesn't usually appeal to me, but every once in a while I'm just like, oh, he's
wonderful, isn't he?
He's very charming and cute.
I really thought that he was going to like break into song. He really seemed like,
I felt like
he
that
fit right
exactly.
in with like Gene Autry and Tex
it's
Ritter
worth
and all those
noting
guys.
that John Ford was also one of the producers on this movie.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So so I think there's some great characters, some good story, some really emotional, kind of heartbreaking and heartwarming parts. And then there's a few annoying things, like the whole thing with the drunks. It's like, oh, do we really need this? But I get that it takes you to where you need to be. So I think it was for I'd say 80% positive, and then just the other 20% is just me going, oh, it's very, very uncomfortable with this. But yeah.
Wonderful. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Kind of with Julia on a lot of things, but again, I think it's part of the necessary things that you want to talk about when you view a movie now. I mean, in 49, no one's going to think about any of that because you're white in Africa. Of course, these are your servants. Well, I mean, that we shouldn't be fine with that, but also it's interesting to watch it from this perspective of, the British guy who's like, this is how we do things here, right? He has no problems with any of this. In fact, you think about the two guys at the beginning and they're kind of like, hey, should we sell this gorilla? And then, you think, wow, that's really bad. Why would you do that? And I can't blame them to go, hey, look, this little colonist white girl is going to give us something that we actually could use, like a flashlight. Sell the gorilla. I mean, why do we have to care?
Right.
It's not in there. It's not outside the realm for them to go, yeah, cool. What? Yeah.
And this is absolutely before the time of anybody thinking about ecology or
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And watching some of the lion stunts again, you're like, oh man, that's
like,
really,
how the hell
we don't do that
lion
again.
I really want to know, like, how do you throw a lion?
They had a floor that would tilt, that would make it look like they were sliding, and then a lot of the other stuff with the lions was good old rear projection You know,
Oh, right,
like,
right. Well, of course. Well, and that's what I mean when I say a lot of it just looks like, you can
Yeah.
tell. I'm not going to say it looks bad, but you can tell that they're just walking in front of a movie. Exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
well, the other option is to have them in front of actual lions.
And sometimes they do. I mean, like
But there's
if I,
a point
you know,
where they throw a living lion somehow. A living lion lands on a break apart, balsa wood table,
yeah,
and like
poor
gets
thing.
up and runs away.
The
He doesn't.
tilted. That's the tilted
right.
floor.
And all of that
Mm.
is just really knowing what you know about the time. You know that there's not the same safety and
Right.
such like that.
Yeah,
right?
again,
That's
there's
just,
no PETA thing at the end
Yeah.
that says no animals were harmed in the making of this film.
Yeah, so I really dig the movie, and it's got some of the best miniature work and stop motion in any movie. And just there's some really interesting stuff, and I agree with Drew. Also, I think that people, as we've gotten past this, future Kong iterations merge the Mighty Joe Young stuff in with the Kong stuff pretty liberally, and I don't think you have the same modern takes on it without both together. I think you would get different. You would have different movies now, or in the past few that have been made, and I think that's kind of fascinating. I really dig it, but you also, I think you kind of have to look at the context of the time as well. The black and white's gorgeous. The print looked really good, and yeah, I'm definitely not a country music fan. That was where I lived. A lot of country music fans were also not fans of anything I was a fan of during Satanic Panic time. So I have my own reservations, which I actually, I've ditched a lot of that. But that my feelings on that, and even then, like, this guy is really charming. For the most part, he's out for good, even though he kind of goes along with stuff. But he's as much the moral sinner as you have in this. Yeah. As far as someone who's not, hasn't grown up with Joe. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. I think it's well worth checking out, and it's, if nothing else, watching it to see how it influenced other similar movies, and how it also gets kind of packaged up with what we see as the modern Kong movies.
My quick opening thought about this, and thank you, Tony, is when I was a kid, I remember reading about Mighty Joe Young. I have never seen it until just now. This is my first time seeing this movie, which is shocking to me. I read about it because I would get those wonderful Crestwood House monster books. There was one for Kong, one for Dracula, and so on. And so, of course, they dedicated some space at least to Mighty Joe Young. And I don't know why I never saw it. But it's so fascinating to me. I just want to point out real quick, with the shared creative group, with the power that King Kong had, it had been re-released in 1938, so this is 11 years after that. That's not so long. So I can't figure out, it's RKO, so it's the same distributing company. Why isn't it this King Kong 3? What's...
Well, so you can have a different take on it. I mean, why? Yeah. Also, why pay all those people who you have to pay to license it? Even internally, you have to. There's stuff you have to do. Why not have? Yeah, that's true. Why not make a new one with? You're gonna have different. You have different people working on the special effects. I mean, it is 11, and there's been time between that. Also, by the way, Mighty Joe Young's acting, and I say acting because when you're an animator, you're also an actor. Yeah. You're acting through by proxy, basically, right? Yeah. And his mannerisms and acting as a stop motion character is really, really good, really cool. Well,
you can tell very much how much that the form had progressed since Kong.
Oh my goodness, it is astonishing. What was the movie we saw with the cowboys? And it was at the Valley of Gwangi?
Valley of Gwangi, yeah.
Yeah. Was that also a Harryhausen piece?
Yep.
Okay. There's so many similarities here that I see in the way that Joe, and for the listener, the ape is called Joe, and the way that Joe interacts with his surroundings and interacts with animals. But my goodness, there are so many, and we should just, the first topic should just be Joe and his world. There are so many great...
Before you go on to that, I want to respond to what you just said. I really tried to find why they didn't just do another Kong movie, or why there were no dinosaurs, even just like the basic, like, why were there no dinosaurs in this, like all of the stuff. And I could not find that. Like, there's plenty of stuff that you can talk about the production of this movie online, or, you know, in books or whatever, but there isn't a whole lot about like there's next to no ink about like the creative decisions behind it. And, you know, this is basically everybody from the Kong creative team. They could have just done it, and, you know, they did not. And that
and it's not for cost savings. Because if it were, my God, everything involving once Joe gets to Hollywood, there are so many special effects. It is almost all special
Rampage
effects
alone is like that's just nut. So like I if someone does know that and they hear this podcast, please go to our Facebook group and give us the loop, give us the lowdown, because I would love to hear that.
The Joe. I want to talk about Joe as a character and Joe as a special effect. And we can break it up into the beginning and towards the end, because the special effects, they keep cranking it up as you go. But when you first meet Joe as a grown ape, it's because he stumbles across. I can't remember why does he stumble across Armstrong and his guys. Like
he's
what?
Like harassing like a lion, basically.
Oh yeah.
He got all these cowboys from a rodeo to go lasso and capture lions, and
so they got a lion in a little like circus trailer, and Joe comes up is he trying to free the lion, or is he attacking?
Jamie, when we were watching it, actually, like, I thought he was attacking him, but Jamie interpreted it as that he was trying to free the lion. So I don't know.
At first, he looks like he's truly, hey, this isn't right. And then once the lion attacks him, is where he goes, okay, cat.
Yeah,
we've had enough of. We're not that. This isn't. You don't mess with Joe at this point.
Joe fights a lot of lions in this movie. I think it's funny that in the universe of this movie, the only animal that these guys can envision, and this is not a complaint, I'm saying the universe of this movie, the only animal these guys can envision taking on an 11-foot gorilla is a lion. That's it.
Well, really what they're saying is the only two animals in Africa are lions and gorillas. I mean, I guess we see some birds
and they hate each other.
Across. Yeah,
they hate each other.
But the huge lion gorilla wars that wage across a very generalized, we don't know what part of Africa this is.
Yes.
Or even kind of what the ranch, whatever it is.
They say it's Uganda, but I don't know enough about Africa to tell you how accurate.
I mean, it is really, they do some really cool shots and process shots to kind of give you this epic,
so many
Africa feel that does look really, it films really well on screen, but just, the rest is really fast and loose as far as,
Can I mention something about this trip to Africa that I thought was so interesting and cynical, not like cynical against the audience, but cynical involving the audience. This is 1949, and I just find it fascinating that they're letting the script here is letting the audience in on just how much people who are doing this bringing back alive crap lie just about everything, that it doesn't really matter who is on this continent or what the different countries are or what animals are there. It doesn't matter. They're just going to make up stories. And they're very sort of just cynical and blasé. I'm talking about Robert Armstrong's character. He's like, it doesn't matter.
He's literally making up stories about pygmy cannibals.
Right. It's like, it doesn't matter. We just tell stories and we sell magazines.
Well,
and that's all.
Just on a whim too. I mean, he's definitely the just horrible side of Hollywood producers and flim flam men.
He's
like
completely also just playing his same character from King Kong over again.
Yeah.
But the way he comes up with, hey, I'm gonna go to Africa and do this. Zero concept of, hey, there are people there who aren't white flim flam artists, and you might want to think about that, or just all of it. And his exasperated co-workers, sycophants, helpers, well, I'm going to do this, and everybody kind of just gives him a pass. Well, he makes us money. That's the thing.
He signs the checks, so
he signs the checks, and which still, if you read about certain producers, etc., that's what.
Yeah.
That's how people continue to be successful. Is the people around them go, well, he makes us money.
But there's a big difference between this sort of benign hucksterism where he signs the checks and he just makes up a bunch of lies versus
eventually it leads to a club full of people getting lioned and jode
before the lions.
Gorilla. Benign nothing. There's nothing benign about the people he subjugates while he's there.
I will say this about the progression of I want to get back to Joe in a second, but the progression of the way Max O'Hara is portrayed versus Carl Denham is portrayed. Max O'Hara it is made abundantly clear that he is a buffoon. Like, he can't get onto his horse. He wears a ridiculously oversized hat at one point. Like, this guy is
like
a
dark
clown.
helmet size.
Really weird.
Like,
I was like, is there any reason other than as a gag that hat is so
it's
big?
definitely a gag. They have a slightly different view of this guy than they did at Carl Denham. They really want you to like him without reservation. Whereas Max O'Hara, they still want you to like him. They still want you to think his hucksterism is charming, but they also want you to know that he's kind of a buffoon. He's
kind of clownish.
Right.
Yeah.
So everybody
I just
around
wanted to point out
sees that as well. Like, they're the guy in his in his very British way. I was like, well, you're interesting, and okay, you pay the bills, Yank, as long as I'm here to help you. But yeah, I mean, there is that, but I wouldn't, again, in retrospect, the idea that people like this guy are benign is not true.
Okay.
Because he has no compunction with signing a young girl and her 8.
That's right. All right.
All of that stuff where he's taking advantage of people is just the thing is, nothing's changed there.
But I guess what I was thinking was, I apologize for being inarticulate. What I was thinking was, I'm thinking about Scott Rudin and how there's a continuum from guys like this who are just narcissists and aren't really aware of the needs of other people, all the way to dangerous narcissists who will throw staplers at their employees.
I mean, this guy does eventually get it. Like, it takes him a long time, but he does kind of snap out of his
he really does. Yeah.
And the latter part of, I'll save it, but I will say this, going back to Joe, but although it relates to this, I have zero sympathy. Like, when he's like, okay, cowboys, lasso that gorilla, I have zero sympathies for how hardcore all those cowboys get their butts kicked.
Oh, yes.
Such a great.
The guy tries to tell him, like, you can't lasso a gorilla, and they're like, yeah, we can sure lasso a gorilla. I just found it fascinating that he didn't rip any of them into tiny cowboy pieces.
The problem, the only problem they had was that they used rope instead of chains. But honestly, they were lassoing him just fine. He just kept breaking the ropes.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Well, I just we don't talk about how that this movie is a bit like Guanji. Like, there's a break. Like, this is right out at there's a whole sequence of cowboys lassoing dinosaurs and that this is just one. It's a giant ape. It's not a dinosaur, but the cowboys lassoing an abnormal animal is that energy and imagery of it is just so great. The fancifulness of it, and in reality, their arms should have been being pulled out of their sockets and everything. Even when Joe pulls the ropes off of him or yanks them off of their hers. But that's also part of the fact that this is a much lighter touch than Kong. It's you don't have Mighty Joe Young picking people up and biting their heads off and stuff like that. This is a kindler, gentler giant gorilla movie.
Well, he's a much smaller gorilla too. He's not nearly as giant.
He's not nearly as giant, but he's still bigger than any real gorilla.
Right. I also, Doug, they do a lot of really great switch ups where you'll have a cowboy doing something and then he's a stop motion character that interacts with Joe.
Well, and that's what I'm
And
saying is
that back and
sometimes
forth
that
with
works, but sometimes it doesn't work.
no, I agree that sometimes it doesn't. It's not seamless.
Well, no, I
But
just
the
mean sometimes it
animation
looks
of
really
them was
bad.
really cool.
Like the little girl at the end. Oh, that was like the claymation of the girl was like, no, this isn't okay.
You know
But
what, though, for what all they have going on still, like, because they have a model building that they've made look like it's burning. They have.
I'm just saying, I'm saying they shouldn't have tried to animate the little girl. They should have just had a doll instead of clay.
I kind of like. I mean, I agree that it isn't maybe as successful as other parts, but I think they did a pretty good job. And again, maybe I'm beating a dead horse on this, but I've seen way worse CG where people try to do CG that should work.
True.
Oh yeah,
and doesn't. And to the level of skill that it takes to do this, again, coming from somebody who this is my realm that I work in.
Well, and I'm not complaining about most of it. I thought most of
it
was exceptional. I just thought there was a couple little things here and there where I was like, maybe that when you ran out of time for, you should have just scrapped it.
But it
didn't bother me really.
In this sequence, though, the way they swap in and out stop motion characters, I thought was, they were taking some chances doing that, and I thought it worked pretty well overall. I mean, you could tell it's stop motion, but the way it flows, for 49, like I can't imagine. Can you imagine? You don't have this history of seeing up until what we can see now. Like,
sure, absolutely.
I'm just amazed at like some of the shot, like because like going back to like the part where he's like prying that lion out of the cage. You have a rear projected lion onto a stop motion cage. Then he tears it open. Like never mind just Joe himself.
Yeah.
But then he tears it open, and then there's a stop motion lion that turns into a real lion. Like that's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, coordinating coordinating that on a CG level right now can be challenging, much less what they had at the time. 49. Yeah. Yes. That was a shot where I was very impressed as well.
So I got the Blu-ray of this in preparation to it, and one of the cool things they had on it was that some of the stuff was carryover from a special edition DVD that came out around the same time as the Peter Jackson King Kong, and so it had a commentary track with Ray Harryhausen on it, and one of the things that he says is he talked about like how many versions of Joe that they had to make, and they ultimately had 5.
So what are they?
They had three full size Joes for most of the stuff, and they had one that was like very small for any time he had to like climb something and they were doing forced perspective, like the climbing the tree at the end of the fire. And then they had one for close-ups. And the funny thing about that is he said that it had powderier lip than the other ones for facial expressions. So he thought it looked more feminine. So he nicknamed it Jennifer. And I just thought that was hilarious.
Wow. I really believed in this animal. I mean, I have to say, these are movies where I'm really practicing a very strange kind of suspension of disbelief, because I know that what I'm seeing is not real. And it's not like Godzilla versus Kong, where the illusion is really remarkable. In this case, I feel like I'm seeing something real in a strange sense. And I'm talking about like when Joe is holding up the platform with Jill playing piano on it, all of this just feels like I'm seeing a thing that exists somewhere.
Yeah,
that
was beautiful. And that whole set was beautiful, by the way, that nightclub.
Yeah, let's talk about that club.
Gorgeous.
So that club, and I don't care if we're jumping around in the story. We can go back and forth. The huge set piece of the second half of the movie is this Hollywood club that Armstrong brings them back to. And it's Julia or Tony,
Yeah.
do you want to
No, I'll
describe
do it.
what this club is like?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, it's a very pretty looking, kind of pavilion-esque kind of club. And so you have the stage. So you have the woman, the main character, the starlet, and she is dressed beautifully. She's got this gorgeous, gorgeous piano that's just really ornate. And she's on this little round platform, and she's playing piano. And they've hyped it up. The club has hyped it up about how Mr. Joe Young of Africa, and nobody knows what or who that is. So then the effect you have is a gorgeous facade, like just a really big frame, basically, of a stage. Very ornate, pretty white with, lots of curvy kind of, details. And so, but it's a big open stage space. And so she's at the bottom of the stage, and behind her is darkness. And then all of a sudden she's floating into the air, which was super cool. I mean, it's just a really neat effect. Super cool. She's floating into the air, and the lights come up, and it turns out that she's being lifted by Mighty Joe Young, and he's lifting the whole platform, including the grand piano and her. And it's a brilliant effect. It looks great.
Yeah.
I thought it looked really beautiful. I can imagine if that were something you saw in real life, that it would just be beyond, because it's
magical
like,
in this movie.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
really is. And the other, like the band, this sort of big band. It's not a giant band, but the band is like in a tower. This space, I've been in only one space that's even anything remotely like the way this club is, and that is the
Casa Bonita.
Casa Bonita in Denver, Colorado, where you really are in all these weird sets looking down on the place where the show takes place.
Bonita.
And the show is like several stories tall and has several platforms for people to dive into the water and all that stuff. It's like that, only this is all jungle. It's all this exotica stuff. It is groovy. I mean, this is an amazing, amazing place, and it is.
The way it's all put together is, they let you linger in it too. Like they go through and like hang out with like barflies for a second, and everything.
That's what I was going to talk about. I also enjoy that the more things change, the more they stay the same. The people in the bar are people there are versions of all of them in bars today. Like, not the Hollywood swankiness of it is its own thing. But even starting from the beginning, where they go, no, you're going to have to go upstairs. You don't get to go to the special area. And then the woman's like, I thought you knew everybody. I thought you knew every waiter in town. That was the thing. Like, I thought you had bribed us to get good seats, and the embarrassment of somebody who hasn't. And then as they travel through the bar, you meet all these just kind of terrible people, because they're all there. Oh, look at those lions. Look at, and they're also the spectacle. There's this thing that happens with these kinds of shows where X amount of people are there just hoping it will fail. Because wouldn't it be cool if we were there, to watch this be a disaster? Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And then other people are there. Wow, I want to say I was here. Even if it doesn't survive, I was here the night of.
Mm-hmm.
And just how that all of that promotion works, and how that's still, again, so much a part of the entertainment industry is fascinating. But no, the treehouse bungalow where the musicians are. Also, I always felt, when things go down, like the musicians kind of get the short end of the stick, which I was, watched with. Yeah, that sounds right.
They do appear to survive, so good for them.
But that's only because, like Drew said, it is a softer. There's not a really good reason why they would survive. But they do, and that's good.
Do they even like the drunks? I question they even deserve.
Oh, I was hoping that lion was it.
Well,
he totally deserves it.
He totally throws Joe under the bus. It's like, that gorilla tried to kill me. It's like, that gorilla saved your ass, even though you threw a champagne bottle at. It does briefly turn. There is like a 1 minute part when we're dealing with those guys where it turns into like a gangster movie, where like you totally think that like Max O'Hara at one point might have been involved with crime, because they're like harassing his cigarette girl, and he's like, I'll throw you to the lions. And like, the way Robert Armstrong says it, like, I was like, you know what? I kind of believe he might.
I mean, you can guess that with the nightclub scene, that some of this funding is not completely legitimate.
Yeah, that's true.
Like knowing what you know,
he's the
guy that wants to force
a
giant, like a 15-foot tall gorilla to do humiliating stunts while forcibly trapping lions behind a bar. That doesn't seem sketchy to me at all.
No, well, the financing, those guys probably did come from some shady financing, and he deals with them like being drunks because, you know, he sees them around and they're part
How
of
shitty
whatever.
is that, by the way? You're trying to run your bar, you've got your young people who work for you, and you got these asshole drunks here at this table, you know, just making life miserable for everybody. I mean, and Tony, that's... Boy, you want to talk about something that never changes.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you want to say, oh, well, look, 49, you know, our values and, you know, how we approach things and how we treat people, that's probably changed. No, not really.
Yeah.
You know, 70 years on, we're still watching, hey, honey, you know, they pour, you know, the woman makes money off of, you know, she pays in and then sells cigarettes and such, and these guys ruin all of that. I do like that he puts all that on their tab.
He's not a complete bastard, just a little enough of a bastard.
He's opportunistic Hollywood flim flam guy,
and he's totally manipulative. But he does eventually learn his lesson, so that makes him better than Carl Denham, I guess.
Sort of, I guess. Yeah.
It's funny that this character actor, I should say, that Robert Armstrong plays essentially the same character for these three movies, you know, learning more and less of his lessons as he goes along.
That always, you know, I am always curious about, there's certain actors who have characters, and there's a few actors who mostly play villains or just real kind of assholes. And some of them you hear about, like, oh no, he's really sweet, or, you know, they're really sweet. And others, you still kind of gotta wonder if they are just really assholes. Like, it seems to come so easily.
Well, the difficulty with actors, you know, is that, and yeah, I've heard this from some, and screenwriters too. You know, I was reading the thing by the guy who wrote Jason X. He was talking about just how awful it is that if you're an actor, you are constantly stretching the truth about what you're up to. You know, if you're on your last dollar, you're still not gonna mention it to anybody. You know,
and I'm not saying that you know, it sucks, especially when actors, when people like, you're that bad guy. Like, no, I'm not talking about that. It's interesting to see people who kind of play a consistent thing. And in this, it's even more consistent in who they're playing across these movies. But I always find it fascinating when you have a person who that's their part and parcel is, oh, look, it's that guy who plays jerks. You know?
Yes. Sure.
And how he, like, you can get typecast. There's all kinds of things, and you know, it's just a fascinating part of the business to me. And you know, and some people are, like I said, super sweet, and others you don't hear much, and you kind of gotta, like, sometimes you just start to wonder, like, is that person? I wouldn't think that, you know, anything of, you know, well, I mean, you're hired to play a role. Like, that's part of the magic of it, right? Like, if you're playing that convincingly, you're doing your job to the best. You're putting that out there. That's pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, no, but I was thinking about, like, William Atherton. All right, in our day, he plays the weasel reporter in Die Hard, right?
Well, he's Dickless from Ghostbusters,
right? That guy might be a wonderful human being, but for some reason he plays weasels. Right. That is his role.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about. And he does it so well. And that's why, like, and you know, you're an actor, you take the job and you take the check home, and it's, you know, it may bug you, it may not be. It's like, look, if you think that about me, that's probably because I play my role so well. Like, I'm that good at it. And that's really fascinating. But again, like, just being part of the viewing audience, even if I didn't know, you know, how the sausage is made, it's always a fascinating thing as a viewer and a person who kind of tracks.
It is.
You know, hey, look, it's that person. Oh, look, they're in this movie. Again, especially when you have someone who's playing this flim-flam guy across multiple movies.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention, considering especially with the kind of role that Robert Armstrong is playing, is the dialogue in this film. I don't want to talk about. I'm not talking about like literally the words they say, but the manner of speech for everyone in this movie except for the lovers. Everyone talks in this like heightened. This is the most 40s movie I've ever watched. They all talk in this like super heightened, snappy patter screwball way. You know, they're all projecting up into their throat and you know, and it's just wild.
You don't have an impression?
No, I do not, because I would need some dialogue to read. You know, but it's.
I feel like I've heard you do a pretty good 40s.
No,
news
sure.
guy.
I mean, anybody can do it, but you just kind of have to listen to it to get it, because they all talk about it, especially in things like when the pool of reporters is hanging out in O'Hara's office and asking him, you know, what's the situation, and they're just all. They all talk that way. It is great. And then, of course, the two lovers come on, and they don't talk that way at all. This is Regis Toomey and Ben Johnson, who just have their own way of just speaking, and they just seem like they're on another planet from all of these double-breasted suit-wearing screwballs. So cool stuff.
And they're supposed to be that stark contrast.
Yeah, it's true.
Especially
I guess that's true.
the aw shucksness of our cowboy.
Oh my God, yes. Isn't he great? Everybody just
I love that
Greg's.
He is using like an authentic like Oklahoma drawl too. Like,
Yeah.
It's not like a put on like I don't think
because he's from there. He's from Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I don't think that I don't think that this character is probably too far off from who he is. And their relationship is potentially seedy seeming because of her, I don't know how old Terry Moore really was when she filmed this, but they keep saying, that she's young,
underage.
She's underage. And, but the way he plays it, like their relationship is actually really sweet. And,
yes.
I think that's
in fact, the actress is 20 years old. She's 20 years old, and Ben Johnson, I don't know how old Ben Johnson is.
Well, I do agree that up until a point, he also is very demure about it.
Mm-hmm. Almost
not
chaste,
not to really defend it, but just how he approaches it.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way he played it, and it's even less kind of strange than Son of Kong, which is they're closer.
I don't think their age difference is quite that.
No. He's like 31.
He's 31. Yeah, so they're only 11 years.
I mean, it's perfectly appropriate. It's fine.
Well, I mean, for myself, it's stretching a little bit, like as far as how I see things. But different time, whatever. But his approach to it for a long time is much more. It also speaks to his character that he's portraying.
Yeah.
That kind of affable, well, we do things like this in Oklahoma. It's not really until she kind of forces the point that he goes, okay, well, I guess, I don't want to push myself on.
Well, she pretty much invites him to live with her.
Right.
Exactly. And how perfect is that they've designed this. It's such a perfect circle the way this movie works. He is a cowboy and she owns a ranch. In other words, this could very well have been a Western where she owns a ranch. She's the daughter of the ranch owner. Ranch owner's dead, and she's just she's now running the place
all
herself.
Those Western story beats, like, once again, not for nothing, John Ford was one of the producers on it.
Right.
But I also, it's also worth noting that, next to her, he's respectful of Joe. Joe, likes him. When all back in Africa, when all of the other people are like cowering, she goes, whoa, aren't you scared? And he says, well, I am, but I'm not going to let him know that. Like, he's smarter about animals because he is this like cowboy type. And he doesn't think
that she should leave. I thought that was hilarious.
He's the one that just tries to talk her out of leaving. So like he's very easy to root for, especially when contrasted to Max, who is much more self-serving.
Yeah, no kidding. By the way, this woman, Helen, the actress's name is Terry Moore. She was born Helen Coford. Anyway, she is alive. She's 92 years old and lives in Glendale. So
she is also on that commentary track that I was talking about earlier.
I mean,
so
Nice.
good on you, Miss
Well,
Moore.
I guess according to the way this movie portrays Africa, her ranch must be a lion ranch.
Right.
It's probably one of the only things.
They grow and sell lions.
By the way, I want to
next
start
to the gorilla ranch.
I want to go back to the beginning because I thought the beginning was hilarious. That this little girl is on this ranch, this lion ranch or whatever it is, and she's like, "Oh, hey, random African dudes walking by with the basket. Can I buy what you have in your basket with sight unseen by trading my dad's flashlight and some other stuff that I found in the house? Cool." And then she's like, "Got myself a baby gorilla, Dad." Surprise. Like she puts it in bed. And Dad's like, "Oh, you. And where's my flashlight? Oh, you took my flashlight, didn't you? Oh, you." And I'm like, this is a baby gorilla.
Yeah.
You seem to be underreacting. He's like, it's gonna become big, and
we're gonna have
like,
to get rid of it.
Wow.
Oh
my god, that was so funny. That whole scene was just cracking me up.
A lot of Joe Young's antipathy towards lions would be explained if maybe lions killed her dad. Maybe she goes,
I was saying maybe lions killed Joe Young's parents.
Possible,
because that would make sense.
Lions could be at the heart of all
of the trauma that Joe Young
I
has
just
had.
realized something because I read it. I did not realize it. I just learned it. I am so ashamed, profoundly ashamed. Terry Moore, who again is 20 here, in 1957, she played Betty in Peyton Place. How did I not know this? I feel like I've
You
failed.
should be ashamed. Everybody but you knew that. You're the only one.
I've failed myself in not knowing.
It's because there were no lions on Peyton Place.
Right.
How were you supposed to know?
Or gorillas.
How were you supposed to know, Jason?
But the thing is, Peyton Place, this is the movie, 1957
we
movie.
do this all the time where we watch things and we go, who is that? And then we find out and we're like, oh my God, I feel so stupid. I totally watch that all the time.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yes. So, because she plays the sort of hot to trot Betty Anderson movie, the 1957 film.
Betty Anderson is not the name of... No, Betty Cooper. Never mind. I was thinking this is the name of the Riverdale one. Okay.
She's the one who goes skinny dipping with Russ Tamlin and scandalizes the town. So anyway, yes. Where were we? We were hunting down Terry Moore. We were talking about the snappy patter. What else should we touch on? Because we weren't making our way through this exactly. But
I love the latter part of this movie where it basically we should talk about the big rampage, but
talk about the rampage, the chase, and then the fire.
This movie basically becomes a caper movie the last 10 minutes of it, and I'm there for that.
Movie, like a Mad Max pre
Road
Warrior chase scene.
Like Stagecoach, where it's just one damn thing after another as they're trying to drive him, I guess, to the docks.
Yes, correct.
But
I will say that the end when we get to that does kind of come out of left field. Like, let's do this. We got to have some heroics.
Right.
That is bizarre. But we should start at the rampage and how that leads to this.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, the drunks get Mighty Joe Young drunk and they're carousing. He escapes and he just absolutely destroys this club.
Also the lead up starts as 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Which she starts to have second thoughts. Like, I didn't want she doesn't want to be a starlet really.
Yeah.
It's kind of not what she was used to.
Because he sells.
The thing is, he sells her on the whole like, you'll be a star. This will be the best.
Yeah.
And when you've only lived there and you've heard about Hollywood, I mean, he's preying on her pretty hardcore, and that's really seedy, and just my stomach churns because that kind of thing happens all the time.
Yeah.
And then
that's another one I didn't mention when I was talking about all the things that made me really uncomfortable. For sure, that was one of them. Mm-hmm.
That guy. Being that guy. But he uses that again because he says, well, you know what? We got to find another act. Just give me a little bit of time. And that's like 7 weeks later.
Yeah.
So by the time there's this rampage, Joe's not eating. Before, like, it's taken a toll on everyone. So when these guys sneak back, they've thrown a bottle at him. All this is really like they're throwing giant coins at him. things have really taken a turn for the worse already. And then they come back, sneak backstage and get him drunk, and then because they're drunks are jerks about that. You drank all our liquor, stupid ape. And then he breaks out, and wish he would have. I would have been fine with him tearing these guys apart.
If he had bitten one of them in half, I would have been fine. Honestly.
Or just when he when he breaks out of the cage and throws the bars on top of one of them.
Yeah.
I would have been fine if that was it. You got, gorilla smashed by this cage. But because it's not that movie, they all, I think, survive, which leads to a rampage full of giant gorilla and lions.
Yeah.
And, complete collapse of the nightclub.
Yeah, he tears it apart. And
it's so sad, too, because it was such a beautiful nightclub.
It's a beautiful nightclub. Again, I want this nightclub to exist, and so I hate to see that they destroy.
Well, the nightclub in its entirety never did actually exist. A lot of it was matte paintings that Willis O'Brien made.
Yeah.
So. Isn't that amazing?
But still.
It's just amazing. Well, I mean,
sad.
The ancient civilization that they blow up in Godzilla King of the Monsters didn't exist, and I still felt like, why are you wasting this ancient?
That is a fair point. I rescind the comment.
I just felt so sad about the destruction of that and this.
Me too.
But anyway, and by the end, by the way, it appears that Max has built another club, so maybe it's just like this one. Who knows? As a tiki guy, I wanted to go to this place.
No, the club that he's building at the end is going to have a water.
Yeah, it's for the
that's right.
For synchronized swimming, underwater babies.
Okay, well, all right. So anyway, after that happens, once they subdue Joe, then our heroes have to all get together and spring Joe before they euthanize him. And so then it becomes exactly what Tony said. It becomes a caper where they break him out and they put him into the back of a white 805 van, a really groovy looking van, and then eventually different vehicles because they're involved in all these chases and stuff like that. But this really, you keep mentioning John Ford, Drew, and this really is, now it's like Stagecoach, because it's how can they avoid getting picked off by the police and other people and stuff like this. And there's double crosses where they stop and switch vehicles and then keep the police on the trail of it's wonderful. This is really great. And they continue to do special effects because Joe, who has been this amazing special effect all through the rampage of that club, is now a special effect on the back of this van. And it's just so great as he's spitting.
You want to talk about, by the way, you want to talk about, I'm backtracking, but you want to talk about Ray Harryhausen, really becoming the Ray Harryhausen that we, the stop motion god that we all know and love. He was majority responsible for that, the sequence where the rampage, and that was basically him just going show us what you can do, kid. And he did.
Inside the club, you're talking about.
Inside the club.
Yeah.
That is an effect, just really effective scene. Everybody's panic. Because it would be bad enough if it was just King Kong style gorilla rampage. But when the lions are freed and the lions are chasing people and he's pulling down the whole club on top of them.
Yes.
That would be absolutely terrifying. And they do it really well. But it's also interesting because somehow by the end, because of how things happen, he's like, oh, I got this new club with, I'm interviewing all these synchronized swimmers. He's able to come back in the same way that our man Denham comes back.
Do you think I
don't even know how that would happen.
Max O'Hara had insurance on that club because he might have actually made money.
Would have to.
Otherwise
true. He'd be completely broke.
The number of people who got lioned and gorillaed is not insignificant.
Yeah.
And a lot of settlements and a lot of trauma happened, and yet because he's again this guy, he gets to come back and have this just keep going. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
The snappy pattern as well with the cops. They also adopt all of this.
And those cops are so gung-ho to shoot him
that's true.
Yeah. Like, taking him back to Africa, we'd solve the problem too. Like, you'd think they would be like, well, I'm not getting paid to chase a monstrously large gorilla. Like, I guess they got one over on us.
Well, there's an extent to which in movies and even into the 80s, because I'm thinking about E.T., cops can be presented as a sort of brainless swarm that is just a thing that is in the way. It's a plot device rather than humans. So you've got those cops in E.T. with shotguns ready to kill these kids.
And the one keeps going, I have a date tonight.
Right. I mean,
it's more, I think, because the way they're portrayed, it's once people are breaking the law, it's your job to bring them to justice.
Sure.
And that's what we're supposed to believe here.
Yep.
And that if they don't bring them to justice, it's on them. It's their ass.
Yeah.
If you don't, how could you let the ape escape and all this happened? And didn't you know he brought down that club and destroyed property? I mean, that's the main thing, right? Like, he destroyed property.
Yeah.
So he should pay. Because it was the lions that did most of the
other thing
people
that
attacking.
The other thing that I crack up with and during the chase sequence is, like, once it gets going, they're just completely down to break as many laws as they have to. Like, they literally steal a guy's car.
Yes.
And essentially kidnap him too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the good guys. Yes. Yeah, sure. They're down to yes, anything to. But see, our opinion is with the heroes, and so we're ready to steal stuff and inconvenience people and frighten them and
they make
whatever.
the guy who they steal his car. They do make him kind of an abrasive blowhard. So your sympathies are still.
I mean, do you remember
there.
the end of Project X when Matthew Broderick convinces those chimpanzees to steal a plane to get away from the military? I mean, maybe the military deserves it, but nevertheless, it's like, no, steal the plane.
I love the idea that the military deserves for chimpanzees to steal the planes. That's pretty funny.
They do, though. They steal it, crash it in the jungle, and go be monkeys. I guess that's what they.
This just reminds me of that.
They're chimpanzees, not monkeys. Don't defend them. Poor guys. They're gonna be involved.
Yeah.
They're gonna write in on the Facebook.
Although it does remind me of the bit in that Will Ferrell one-man show where he's playing Bush Jr. and he talks about the plan for them to arm monkeys with spear guns. how that fails.
How could it possibly?
Oh my goodness.
That bit is really, really good. Regardless of your political leanings, the monkey spear gun plan, as detailed in that show, still makes me laugh.
We're gonna go so far afield before because I'm biting my tongue, not steering this conversation towards other armed weapon animal movies that we could be getting into. So let us not do it.
I know I haven't. Going with the theme though. I haven't seen one where we armed lions with like
or lava sharks. Wait, is lava sharks their own weapon?
There is that movie, The Ghost in the Darkness, where lions are treated like Jaws, basically.
Of course, yeah. But what I'm talking about is I haven't seen one where lions either hold or are equipped with assault rifles.
The wonderful idea.
Or lasers on their tail, like a manticore. That would be fascinating.
Well, I think you could fit them with a cool sort of headpiece that would have a laser right above their forehead. So
lions
maybe
I feel like if you're going to talk about lasers. Actually, I'm thinking about lasers and sharks now. I think that was actually in Austin Powers. Because every time you have lasers, you have to say it in Dr. Evil voice.
Oh, of course. Lions with freaking lasers.
But I was just thinking, if it were roar activated, in other words, if you taught them, hey, when you roar, you shoot a laser off the top of your head at whatever.
That would be terrifying. Like weapons grade laser where you hear the roar and then
nice.
That'd be great. I mean, we're way far.
Nice.
My apologies, but I kind of
no, it's fine.
I haven't seen that in a movie, and now again I do want to see that in a movie.
If you could put a lion in a trebuchet then you can throw lions at people.
What's the
That's
trebuchet
horrible,
again?
though. I
Is
mean,
that like
they
a
kind of did
catapult?
that with this tilting floor here. So
Yes,
let's not do
that's
that.
What's the trebuchet for those of us who aren't
a slingshot,
sophisticated?
a giant
That's what I thought.
catapult.
Okay.
A catapult.
Yeah.
Yeah, catapult.
That's what I said. I said, is it a
Yes.
catapult? You
Yeah.
didn't hear me.
I didn't.
Cool.
In that
Great.
case, it's literally a catapult.
Oh my god.
Wonderful.
Apologies. That was terrible. But I don't know. I took the shot.
The chase sequence in this also is so crazy that like they keep throwing stuff at them. Like the car gets stuck in the mud and they have to get Joe out to like pull the car up, and then of course they run across a burning orphanage.
Yes.
Wait,
Well,
before you get to the burning orphanage, I absolutely loved all the comic stuff with Joe just kind of like gesturing toward the guys that they're chasing.
Yeah.
Hey,
Wonderful.
serves you right, you bastards. It was super
If this was
funny.
a modern movie, he would totally flip them off like that.
Yeah,
Like,
totally. That was hilarious.
I did like all of that business, and that's again the like I said, the acting, Joe's acting, through stop motion is just so great. Him hanging out in the back of the truck once they switch trucks.
Yes.
And he's hanging his feet down, and he's, it feels dangerous too. Because you're like, what if you get kicked out of the back of the truck? Like, be safe, Joe.
It totally feels dangerous.
I also like
drumming his
the
fingers
time
out of
period.
boredom?
Like, we don't.
Oh yeah, drumming his fingers out of boredom was really funny.
I also like the little bits of just, hey, this was a time with the random hamburger stand that's just out in the, hey, people are coming through here. It's not a lot of people, but it's enough to keep this hamburger stand running.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff just is awesome. But yeah, they keep stacking things until and the cops don't know where they're going. They've kind of fooled them, and then they finally, they stop at a gas station. Somebody sees them, and the guy goes, "Oh, that's my." I love the bit of that's my old man's lingo.
Yes. That what was? Please forgive me. What were they supposed to be speaking, or was this also completely made up?
It's always
been made up, but it sounded sort of Polish, maybe. I think it was supposed to be just. I think it's basically. I could be wrong because I'm not a linguist, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. But the impression is something European, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it didn't sound Italian. I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I was unsure. But the idea is, hey, this is what I hear when I'm at home. Oh wait, a gorilla, you say?
Yes.
There's a lot of great bits, but it is like just one thing stacked on another.
Yeah.
That leads to this extended chase, which at the point where they're off road and they go, oh no, an orphanage is on fire. I get why they did that and why it becomes this heroic thing, but
sure.
Orphanage on fire on the way to the docks.
It's pretty random. And by the way, this orphanage is the size of a skyscraper. It is like
it's supposed to be like 4 stories plus an attic, but it feels much taller than that.
Yeah. Can I ask a technological question?
I'm surprised that the cops didn't blame Joe for the fire instead of being like. I love that the cops drive up and immediately start shooting, like they're about to shoot. It's like, do you see that there are a bunch of orphans and a burning building, and your top priority right now is still shooting the gorilla?
Look.
Okay, good job.
Yeah. You've seen what that gorilla can do. Yeah. How do you know that gorilla or arsonists aren't more of a problem?
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Given that the cops already had so much prejudice against him, I'm surprised they didn't blame him.
Gorilla arsonist sounds like a great punk band name, though.
Gorilla arsonist, also a good feature for lava shark films.
Gorilla arsonist. So it blends together.
Gorilla arsonists. I like that. Yeah.
Gorilla arsonists.
So how this movie turns red all of a sudden, and
it's just a filter,
I just want to
orange
know,
filter.
Would I'm in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. I go to the movie house. Will they be able to show me the red filtered version, or will I only get the black and white?
I mean, it's whatever you tint. It's the same way that you would tint. They hand painted so many silent movies. It's just whatever comes through the lens. It's the filming of it that makes the difference. So if you're willing to tint it or to put a filter over it, over the lens at a certain point, or just tint the film, that reel gets tinted, or reels, depending.
But Jason's just asking if the projectionist can.
So there's no problem. So no matter what, I'm going to get to see it. So there's no So only if I'm watching it on TV do I miss out on this effect,
right? Because
I'm watching a black and white television.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I bet it would probably look darker. Man, that's also a thing. Like even we had a black and white TV for a long time. Or you go to relatives and they still have a black and white TV.
Yes.
It's just, the living room TV. Like I remember my dad, like we had a TV, and then he had an older TV since my grandfather was a TV repairman.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So he gave my dad probably a good deal, but my sister, I think at a time, had a black and white TV in her room, which if somebody was watching something on the whoa, you got two TVs. That was pretty extravagant at the time. One of them was black and white. It's just so bizarre to think about that. Like anything you're watching in color is now not in that room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just film, but like everything that you're used to watching in color right now.
Yeah, Batman,
in the other room is not
built around color.
Yeah,
is a black and white show. Yes, right.
So weird to think about now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know if Drew wanted to take it. We haven't.
Yeah, Drew, do you want to guide us through
I know you were talking
about this insane rescue section? It is, by the way, suspenseful as heck. I mean, I'm not blowing smoke. I really thought this was a very suspenseful sequence.
Well, I just am like astounded at how much stuff is going on. They have again a model of the house with rear projected fire. They have sometimes a model that is actually on fire. They have debris. They have stop motion debris. You have a stop motion Joe, like a little teeny tiny stop motion Joe for forced perspective shots of him like climbing the tree. You have stop motion children, you have actors, you have stunt people. Like this sequence, when you take into account everything that went into it, is just insane and intricate. And just like, I think, when people talk about like the Kong movies and the original King Kong and how it like is such like a step up in special effects for its time, and then you get this like there's just so much cool stuff here as far as like old school special effects, like just within this one sequence, and it just blows my mind. And like and also in this sequence you have Joe. Yes, he's had the rampage sequence. Yes, he's kind of scary when he's corralling the cowboys and the wrestlers, which we didn't need to talk about, go backtrack and talk about that.
Oh, right. We forgot about the wrestlers.
Yeah, but he becomes like a full-on hero during this scene. I mean, he's rescuing orphans, and this is kind of like a wish fulfillment thing for every kid who loved monster movies and loved Kong, and they wanted Kong to be the hero that you thought of him as. Like this movie kind of delivers on that, and that you have like this giant ape literally rescuing orphans. And I mean, the human characters are there too. They're active in it, but like this really is just like a showcase for how great this character and Joe that they've created, and how much you can be like rooting for him.
Right. I wonder, it looks like a few times that he's going to die, and so it would be really easy. I do kind of wonder about the back and forth. Like, is he supposed to die so that he is absolved that way? Well, he was never meant for this, newfangled world. But it is kind of, I really like, actually, since we spend so much time with him and he's such a lovable character, that he actually survives this.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there was some back and forth, like, you can't kill him, or that's the only way that, they'll let him go. But the actual way they let him go is because he saves orphans. Like,
yeah, isn't that crazy? That's true. That's a really good point.
Well, and
the scene where he rescues the orphans when he's up in the tree, it was terrifying. Speaking of suspenseful, that was very terrifying. But go, Drew, talk about the wrestlers too. Whenever you finish your thought that you're about to make.
the one other thing about the I think I lost my thought. The one other thing about the fire sequence that I think it's the fact that you do think he's going to die at certain points. It really goes back, like they kind of set it up. It's not quite as mythic as Beauty killed the Beast, but like at the beginning of the movie, her father kind of says like, oh, eventually he doesn't belong with us. Eventually he's going to become this big dangerous gorilla, blah blah blah. Like he kind of sets it up for the King Kong ending, and then instead it ends with, oh, no one's ever going to shoot Joe now
he's too good.
He's too good.
Yeah.
But
and there are no truly evil people. Like we just sketched over the 1998 version, Julia and I. We didn't watch the whole thing. We just kind of skimmed through a couple scenes. That one has really dark, evil characters who absolutely would try to carve up Joe Young if they got their hands on it, at the end of this. But there's nobody in the universe of this movie who's like that.
I think they thought maybe, like you're talking about years, over a decade's worth of sympathy for Kong. I kind of wonder if they went in here engineering, like, thinking like, oh, people are going to know it's the creative team behind Kong. We're going to, set it up to where it sounds like it's going to be a tragedy, and then in the end it's not. And there again, when you're a little kid and you're watching this movie and you really wanted King Kong to live, your heart kind of soars for
Hell
that.
Yeah, me too. Works for me. So.
Yeah, but the wrestler sequence. Yes. We should backtrack and talk about the wrestler.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sequence.
Tell us about. Or Julia, did you want to explain?
I'll let Julia take that.
Well, it's just part of the big club is that they do. It's like a variety show, So they're saying, "Oh, hey," it actually is a lot like Casa Bonita. But anyway, so they bring out these. I think it's 6 or 10. How many was it? 6? I don't remember. Anyway, it's like 6 or so or more.
It was
guys.
10. It was 10 because
10?
they also say he's the strength of 10 men.
10 men. Okay,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
So 10 strong men in their matching onesies. And they all, for each of them, because they're actual real famous wrestlers at the time, each of them gets introduced individually and shows their strength by bending a piece of metal, of iron, or maybe straightening something out, or breaking something, or in the case of the last guy, I think it was my favorite, he had these little bitty belts around his biceps, and then he flexes them, the belts pop off. Anyway, it's hilarious. And so
feats
all
of
these
strength,
guys,
my friend. That's what these are. They're doing feats of strength. Yes.
And so they play a wonderful game of tug of war with Joe Young over this pool. Again, the Casa Bonita thing, because if you've never been to Casa Bonita, or if you've never seen the South Park episode about Casa Bonita, it's basically, like Jason was saying, it features cliff divers. So you've got this pool at the bottom of a cliff, and then you've got all these scenes that get acted out around the cliff diving. So it's basically the same thing as here, where that you've got, and I think they should do actually something like this in Casa Bonita, because the idea is that they're playing tug of war, and each time he pulls the rope toward him a little bit more, one of the strong men falls into the water between in the pool between them, and it's just hysterical. Everybody's laughing. It goes, honestly, we were talking about what can possibly go wrong when you have all these wild animals in a nightclub, but honestly, that the first few weeks or even months, I think nothing goes wrong. Like it's fine. It seems to be.
Although Joe does get in a fist fight with one of the wrestlers.
Yeah, but it's hilarious. It was really well. Nobody got hurt.
I thought it was part
nobody
of the
got
show.
hurt.
No, he gets his ego hurt. And tries to pick, which is probably one of the dumbest things you could possibly do.
No kidding.
The fact that, again, that guy doesn't get his arms ripped off.
Exactly. No, it's just lucky.
Well, it's absurd too, because like so like The Rock or like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, like the strongest, you could think of the strongest human being. Yeah. They're not going to be as strong as a out of shape silverback gorilla.
Right.
So
exactly.
Like a freakishly big gorilla like Joe Young. Like this guy is lucky that Joe didn't like literally knock his head off like that one boxer in Jason Takes Manhattan.
Right. Yeah, Joe has a lot more patience for this.
Yes.
Or is handled better. But I can't. That guy is not coming back to the set. Hopefully, like that should be. But letting your ego get in the way of like where you're fighting a gorilla, especially if you're not drunk. Like
I have to
like
admit,
stone cold sober trying to fight a gorilla is it's not the best idea, that's for sure.
I really thought that this was part of the show, that it was expected that and that Joe was just so well trained that he even has a part of the show where he gets into a fight with one of the wrestlers.
If you watch the sequence though, it doesn't appear that way because he's mad that he's kind of put in this position, and then Joe taunts him by like pulling him up and down on the rope.
Oh yeah.
So when he finally pulls him up, the guy has this look of like, "Oh yeah, gorilla, I'll show you," which again, just really bad. Just terrible, terrible ego problems. I won't be shown up by this gorilla, so I'll fight him. Like, oof. Yeah, we're lucky you're not in a rated R version of this movie there. Buddy.
Right. No, absolutely. And the cynical, I guarantee, this was redone by Disney, and even that aimed at 10-year-olds, the Disney version it still is a lot more violent and cynical than this. But I think if you had made it into a darker movie, it could have been a lot uglier. And
I
like
team
this.
up with Clyde from Any Which Way But Loose.
Yeah.
For their gorilla boxing promotion.
That's right. So getting back to the end of the fire sequence, after Joe is a hero, we don't bother showing going to the docks. There's no going to the docks and getting on a ship sequence. And I'm glad, because it would have been a lot more special effects for a scene that doesn't really do anything, because he's going home. And then we have a scene at the end where we find out that Joe and Jill and Greg have settled nicely back, on their ranch as life should be. And it's great. I mean, to me, this appeals to kids and the kid at heart, because it's like, how great, they live on a ranch. They have a giant gorilla. I mean, who doesn't? How cool is that?
And they bring back the cute little trick of her throwing a banana to Joe, and like how they do that. Because then again, it's a very, very nice combination. But in the earlier one, he eats it whole, and in the last one, he peels it. So he's clearly learning the ways of humans.
Right. Oh, by the way, it was my bad, and I don't know why. It's a stupid mistake. Every Which Way But Loose, because the sequel is Any Which Way You Can.
Okay.
I know that probably doesn't matter.
I didn't notice that. I mean,
I think I put Annie at the time. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff that bugs me later.
That's not a trio either. There's only two of those.
I don't know. I guess the bottom fell out of Clint Eastwood meets orangutans. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a good.
It's strange that there's no Every Which Way But Loose 3, called.
By the way, the nightclub is based on a real life club called the Coconut Grove in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles.
No, wow. Kidding.
Jason, by the way, did Casa Bonita survive?
It is working on it. I think they're filing bankruptcy, but they're hoping that doesn't mean they'll have to close, that they can maybe reorganize and come back.
The problem is a place like that, it's only good for visitors. I mean, they couldn't switch over to like selling enchiladas.
Yeah, because they're definitely not known for their food. They may be known for their food, but not in a good way.
So, to be honest, Tony, first of all, I believe it's been recognized as a historic landmark. So I don't think anybody's going to knock it down. But what's going to happen? I don't know. Anybody's guess.
Hopefully it'll come back.
The obvious way to bring this back is to introduce some lions and gorillas.
Yes. I'm going to suggest that.
Lions with roar-guided lasers.
I'm going to say, you know what you need, because they already have a gorilla. They have a guy.
That's right. He runs around. He'll sneak up on you.
So they just need lions and also strongmen. Oh, it's a guy in a suit, not a real gorilla. I'm kidding. No,
just in case you were worried that they were setting gorillas free.
A guy in a gorilla suit, and then so now they need some strongmen to play tug of war over the water.
I just want to mention Casa Bonita. Despite all the things we've said so far, there are sections of it you sit in and you feel like you are outside in a Mexican village sometime at the turn of the century.
Yeah, it's like a combination between this club and Rainforest Cafe.
there are sections of it where you're in the jungle, sections of it where there are stalactites and stalagmites and you're in a cave. There's sections of it that look like Bonanza. I mean, it is, and of course, there's the floor show.
Well, the reason I ask is because if I came to visit you guys once things were
gotta
safer,
go there. Yes,
then
hell yeah.
Once
you can come now that you're vaccinated. The question is if they're open. We just gotta find out if they're open.
Yeah,
I think they're open. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of safety stuff that I'm still thinking about, but yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, eventually, if I come to visit, that was one of the things. That's why I was curious. Despite its lack of lions behind glass, I guess I would still be interested in going.
Their website says Casa Bonita is reopening soon. Oh, they also have those weird little robot fortune tellers that you put a quarter into and it tells you your future.
So many great things. So many great things. Seriously, look up the South Park episode. It's kind of wonderful.
I've seen that, and that's kind of
yeah.
And then you guys and a few other friends moved to that area and talked it up. So
yeah,
that's on my list of visiting friends and doing something.
Man.
But again, not for the food.
Yeah,
right. That's
Julia dislikes the food. Actually, I just have, I guess, less taste than Julia because to me it's fine. You know, I mean, sopapillas are sopapillas, man.
Yeah, the sopapillas are fine, but the rest of it.
Okay. Anyway, so.
They don't allow you to throw bananas to the gorilla people, do right? To the gorilla, quote unquote gorillas.
I think that would be frowned upon because bananas mean banana peels, and you don't want to slip on those rocks and fall into the water the wrong way.
That's true.
This thing is so.
Banana peels are only hilarious in context of movies.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm essentially we're doing a long endorsement for Casa Bonita, but it is so funny
that is my endorsement.
The floor show involves Black Bart, and he's like stealing gold, and he's kidnapping women and gets into a gunfight, and there's it is really like it just got transported from 1949 and learned nothing along the way. It is truly wild. Anyway, so that's the end of Mighty Joe Young.
Was that the end of Mighty Joe Young? I don't remember any of those things in the film. I remember a charming coda where Matt gets a film sent to him from Africa.
Right. And then you suddenly get transported to a restaurant where...
Right. Sans lions.
I would like to see this version of Mighty Joe Young where Black Bart is in it.
After the orphanage thing, if you had just tacked on somebody had said, "Hey, we need 20 more minutes," that might have happened.
Joe gets into a.
This is truly like Blazing Saddles at that point because you're just like, I don't know, whatever.
Well, I mean, I as much as I like that sequence, I will say that was one of those because you've already had a lot of twists and turns throughout the chase scene, and that stuff is great. Like, by no means am I knocking that, but at the point where they're on the way to the docks and it changes to, oh wait, an orphanage is on fire, that part is extremely abrupt. Let's just put it that way.
It is. It is.
I mean, you got to do what the movie's going to do, but that is one of my few kind of critiques across it. Is it's really obvious, like, well, we got to have him do something heroic. Oh, wait, the orphanage in the middle of nowhere is on fire on the way to the shipyard.
Yeah,
that's its own thing. It is a beautiful sequence, though. It's truly amazing at what all is going on there, like Drew said.
And you really worry, with this little baby that Joe decides to save, even though the baby keeps putting itself in danger.
We get more rodeo daring do. There's from ropes, and although I don't think the preferred way you escape fire is to go up,
right?
But
I think he had to. That was the only choice he had at that point, or they had, because the stairs. Remember, the stairs collapsed.
Right,
so they went up because the stairs collapsed. Yeah, there was definitely only choice. But yeah, the fire, looking at the base of the tree, was terrifying, and then it just goes up and up. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of really scary stuff in that movie, in that scene.
It's wonderful. It reminds me of some of the suspense in the first Jurassic Park, with the car and the tree and all that stuff. It's very similar, just how much is going wrong as they try to escape this thing. I loved it, and because we know we're in the hands of a movie that is going to give us a happy ending. We're not that worried about it because remember, in like The Outsiders, the penalty for trying to save somebody from a fire is that you get grievously burned and you die. And that's not going to happen. So good for them.
Like, I mean, they kind of, it could go either way at some points, but it's just so masterfully done.
Oh yeah, my goodness, yeah. So we should get our final thoughts about Mighty Joe Young, and then go to endorsements, which I'm truly dying to know what people want to endorse. Drew, final thoughts.
I really like this movie. It is a bit of a stretch in that it is not much of a horror film, but it is adjacent to Kong, and I think important to the Kong mythos. So I think that our listeners who might be hesitant to listen to a thing about Mighty Joe Young probably should check it out if they haven't, because it's a cool movie, and if you like stop motion animation and old school special effects, this movie has a lot of really good stuff. And I actually just love the plot, and I love the characters, and I'm charmed by the world of this. I know there's some stuff that is backwards by today's morals, but I still just Jason often says that he sees a movie that he wants to live in the world for a little bit. I watched this movie and I would like to live in the world of this movie for just a little bit. Maybe not get mauled by a lion, but I also wouldn't be one of the people throwing champagne bottles at Joe. So I love this movie. I'm glad we talked about it. Enough said.
Excellent. Julia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said everything that my thoughts were. I really enjoyed it. It does have, the problematicness of a movie of that era, as many of them do, and some movies of this era, actually. But yeah, the effects are fantastic. I think it's a neat story. I think their characters are great. The acting is good. I mean, it's all. There's just once we get past the problems with how how people of color are treated, how animals are treated, how the young woman is treated, everything else is good. So yeah, I think if we could just rewrite that part, it would be fantastic.
Tony?
I really like the movie. I especially just enjoy the special effects, and the Joe Young is just, and I like that they build him as Joseph Young. Mr. Joseph.
Mr. Joseph, yeah.
Joseph. That adds some class, and it's a really nice touch. I hadn't seen it in a really long time, so it was cool to go back and watch it again and just really soak in all the nice touches of the effects and the stop motion craft. As an animator, I really pay attention to that a lot, and it's really marvelous. Again, 49 brings us stuff that was okay in 49, or even if it wasn't, they're still going to show it. And that's its own thing. But I really dig the movie. I think it's a blast, and I definitely recommend seeing where all this came from, especially, like I said before, where elements of this kind of get, because it's so much wrapped up in the Kong look and feel, especially with the Son of Kong, where there's a smaller ape, etc. Seeing where people are influenced by watching this as well as Kong, and how that influences giant ape movies after this is, I think, fascinating.
Wonderful, thank you. I was really glad that Drew suggested that we watch this movie, because I had never seen it, and it's shocking to me that I'd never seen it, because it's such a wonderful 1940s movie right at the end of that era. I love the club. I love everything about this. So it was really enjoyable to visit this world and see this great character. So, I don't have anything other than the very astute cultural observations that Julia makes. I'm very glad that I got to see it. So thank you, guys. All right, let's get our endorsements. Whatever you've been watching that you want to share with the world. I know that Julia has been diving back into binge watching some older shows, not older shows like Peyton Place, but older shows like Not 2021. So let's go. We start with Drew. Drew, what do you have for us?
Well, outside of the really nice Blu-ray that I bought of Mighty Joe Young to prepare for this episode, which I do think you should get if you are interested in King Kong and vintage fantasy or monster films. I think you get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I went to my local comic book store the other day because, I'm fully vaccinated now, and I wanted to, go do something. And so I went to my local comic book shop, and they have a 50% off rack. And I found, it was a collection of every Dark Horse DC crossover that had Superman in it, including the two Superman Aliens crossovers. And the first one is written by Dan Jurgens, and who does a lot of the art on it too. And I remember really liking that one when it came out, but I enjoyed rereading it. And I talked about this on Twitter earlier. There is one absolutely positively genius scene in that, when you're talking about like delivering on what a crossover between Superman and aliens, the sort of stuff you can do in that. So at one point, Superman gets a face hugger on him. And of course, anybody who's seen one of the Alien movies knows where that's going to lead. And, the rest of the storyline is this like sort of ticking time bomb. Like, because he's in this, he's in Argo City. He's in a version of Argo City. If you've read Superman stories, you know what that is. But eventually, the chest burster starts trying to break out of him, and it can't because he's Superman. Like it's like he knows he has this thing in his esophagus that's like clawing at him, and it can't really go anywhere. So he flies out into space and vomits the alien up.
Wow.
And I was like, that's genius. That's like, taking the two extremes of having a character like Superman injected into an alien story. It's just crazy. And, it's the sort of thing that I'm like, I'm there for this, and, Superman vomiting up a xenomorph because it can't break out of his rib cage. And, I don't know if that was Dan Jurgens' idea or if it was an editor's idea, but whoever came up with that, my hat is off to them, because I just think that is, a decade from whenever that thing originally came out. I still think that is just like a genius idea. So I'm endorsing the whole crossover, but I am also heavily endorsing the creativity of thought that went into that one scene.
Excellent. Julia, what do you have for us?
Well, like you said, I've been, I returned to Designated Survivor to watch that series again, because I'd really enjoyed it when it was on a few years ago. And like you said, it wasn't old. It's like a couple years old. But, anyway, so I started watching that again. Gruesomely, it was because I was watching Joe Biden's address and I was thinking about the designated survivor, because in this year, they didn't have one because not all of Congress and everybody were there. So, then I was like, I want to watch that show again. So I started watching it. Great. It's really fun. A good show. Really interesting. But, I think the other thing I wanted to endorse, other than Casa Bonita, is, The Courier with Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it is finally streaming. I think it's probably maybe still in theaters as well. But it was the one that I said that I was sad that I couldn't watch it on my TV, but now I can. So, really good story based on a true story about an English businessman who just kind of found himself in the spy biz. But it's really, really good. I liked it a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you. Tony, what about you?
I have a few things. Just tonight, we watched Mitchell's versus the Machines, which was really great. I really dug that movie. Really cool animation, interesting story. Has a lot. There's some commentary I think that a lot of people will probably should see or think about it. I think it was done really, really well. Great cast, fantastic style. But I really enjoyed that. I've also the other day started watching an anime called Way of the House Husband, where it's kind of a gag comedy manga that's been adapted, and it's in short episodes, like vignette kind of situations, where one of the most badass yakuza is now a house husband, supporting his wife as she goes out into the world, and it's all of these. The situation is, what's he gonna do that looks like some tough yakuza thing that turns out to be him relating to be a house husband. It's really funny. I really enjoyed it. And then also in a very, non-metal super chill thing. Rain and I started playing Pokemon Snap, which I'd played on the Nintendo 64, but it's basically you're on rails and you take pictures of Pokemon. That's the game. But it's amazingly chill because of that. And, you know, it gets more complicated as far as like you have to frame the Pokemon right and you do different things. But the whole idea is take the best Pokemon picture you can. And that is a very chill gaming experience that Rain and I were doing today, which, you know, that's where I'm at. Like, no, I have other games that are a lot more at stake and a lot more kind of nerve-wracking, and I enjoy those. But this new Pokemon, also, it sounds really ridiculous if you try to trash talk. Like, take a better picture of a Squirtle like that. That sounds amazingly dumb, but it is super fun. So, but those are the things I've been playing and watching, and really enjoyed it.
Thank you. The only thing that I would endorse, I mean, I've been watching a lot of stuff, but I want to bring up Creepshow. So I have not been one of those guys watching Creepshow, and you know, it's a show on Shudder. I haven't had Shudder until recently, and Creepshow is just wrapping up its second season. But I did watch the season finale with Justin Long, and it's called The Night of the Living Late Show. And what's really cool is that I, you know, and I may be greatly disappointed by the rest of the series because this is the only
it's kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, this one, the whole concept is that Justin Long is an inventor who has created a VR technology that allows you to get into a classic movie and actually, incredibly, interact with the things in that movie that can have the characters sort of go off in their own directions. I'm extrapolating a little bit. But my point is, he goes into Horror Express, the classic film with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, because he loves it, and the story sort of moves from there with you know, his wife being jealous of the time he spends in VR and yada yada. It is really good. I was amazed at it, and this was a neat episode. So that's my
Jason. I would say that that's probably from both a technical level and a storytelling level the single best episode of that entire show. But I would highly suggest going back and watching the first episode of this season, because I think you would. Other reason why I think this episode is a lot better, other than the razzle dazzle of them, you know, having Justin Long interacting with an old movie, which is technically very impressive. But this is also a lot long. Most of these stories, they're 20-minute. Most of these episodes are 20-minute stories, whereas this one is 40-minute. And I think that helps them develop a much more interesting story. However, I do think you would get a lot of enjoyment out of the first story and the first episode of the season, because it's kind of like a tribute to like famous monsters of Filmland and like Aurora model. In fact, I think I endorsed it actually when it first came out, now that I'm thinking about it. But, you know, the Creepshow series it's fun. It's fun. Like, all the episodes are fun, but it's definitely hit or miss. Although, you know, if nothing else, I always get an enjoyment out of, they use almost entirely practical effects on the show. And so I get an enjoyment out of seeing all the practical monster effect. But I definitely think that you would like the first episode of this season as well. It's not quite as good as the Horror Express show, but I would like the Horror Express episode is, again, probably the single best episode from both a technical standpoint and a storytelling standpoint of the entire series.
Yeah. And it's I believe her name's Darcy Carden, the woman from plays Janet on The Good Place.
Yeah, she's terrific in it as well. I love the part where she's like, "I hate this movie. No one's ever heard of Horror Express." And of course, there's tons of people on Twitter that are like, they're doing a Horror Express episode.
But that was one of my favorite lines when she goes, "Nobody's seen Horror Express," because it both expresses that it is kind of a. I mean, that's. You kind of do have to be a horror fan to know Horror Express.
It's a horror fan's movie.
Right.
Like, it's not The Shining or even Night of the Living Dead.
And so it's a good insult for her to hurl, you know, and that makes it really funny. So
it
it's
is.
cool.
It is also hysterical that it's Justin Long's favorite movie. Like,
Right.
like
Nobody's favorite movie is Horror Express.
I bet you somebody's favorite movie is Horror Express. Like but you know, they do a good job. I mean, I think part of the reason why they pick the movies that they pick is they do Horror Express and they also do bits of Night of the Living Dead. And they're also both public domain.
Right.
So that's probably another reason why they use
Nobody's favorite movie is Zombies of Moratown.
Well, isn't it?
Sorry, did you was that eye roll audible or was it just just visual?
All right. Tony actually wanted to bring up something else. Tony, what was it?
Oh, I did remember Arrow is putting out a new box set of Daimajin. And I'll have to put that on our site. But I'm super stoked. Our friend Matt Frank is doing art for it.
Wow.
It looks really good. Even the last set, I think Mill Creek did it, has been out of print for a little bit and started to escalate. So there's a couple places that have it. I know Diabolic DVD and I think Zavi. It's import, but I think I don't know if it's region free or not yet. But I am super stoked because that's one of my favorite trilogies, especially the first one. But the box set looks really good. And I'd forgotten about that. I pre-ordered it already. That was an instant pre-order for me. I think this is probably the third time I bought this set, though.
Sure.
But it keeps going out of print. So this is a nice deluxe version. And, you know, if it's like the Gamera set or the other stuff, I mean, Arrow is doing some really great things over the past few years, especially things that I really dig. I mean, they're always quality. But I've been even more of a fan over the past few years. And that's hard to say because, you know, like I said, they've been doing really great stuff for a long time. But yeah, the Daimajin set, I do recommend, especially if you liked our episode on it. And like I said, it's been out of print. I do have to find out if you have to have a region-free player, which that can be a little bit more expensive if you want to go that route. But I am super duper stoked for that. And hopefully, you know, if it does well enough, it might get a US release as well. So that would be cool.
Excellent. I just suddenly, I think I'd really like to explore some of the stuff that we, you know, go back and look at some of the things that we've reviewed in the past years, because, you know, we turn towards the summer and I start thinking about some of the great movies that we've watched in the summertime. And I feel like it was maybe a year ago, but maybe it was a couple years ago when we did the Bloodthirsty trilogy, you know, and the Japanese vampire movies. Oh, fantastic. So what I'm going to do this week is just re-explore some of the stuff we've already looked at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one listed now is limited edition Arrow US, so should be all good.
We should post our Daimajin episode, in fact.
Yeah. But this was, as soon as I saw it, even before I knew who was involved in, you know, the artwork and everything, you know, it was an instant, how soon can I go buy this? How soon can I put this in my cart, basically?
Awesome. Well, and that brings us to the end of our King Kong Godzilla retrospective, which has been a complete blast. But we are not slowing down. In fact, we are hurtling towards the summer, and we have some big plans for some cool retrospectives this summer, starting next week with what we're calling a Gaslight retrospective, starting with Gaslight. And that is going to be a ball. So thank you very much, guys. And bring it to the Facebook page. We'll talk about it there. And I will see you guys really quickly. Bye, everybody.
Night.
Night.
Night.